Hello, everybody. Can you see us? Is everything okay? Let's say hello in the chat. We are here with King Cousin. I spoke the name correctly, right?
It's my friend from Atlanta. Very good.
So, Ken, do you want to introduce yourself? I don't know if we need, but it's good. Or just
Okay, well,
yeah,
thank you, Bruno. I think I'll just go ahead and go from now. Is that okay?
sure, please.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Hey, welcome everybody. Glad to see so many people are here. Although it's interesting the way this is set up, I have no idea how many people are here. So feel free to say hi if you like or not. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying the conference. I haven't been able to watch as many of the talks as I wanted to, but I really have liked the ones that I've seen. Let me share out my screen here. So it'll take just a moment to share the screen. I got to make sure I pick the right one. And there you go. And Bruno, thank you very much. That's perfect. Thank you. So at any rate, I have some slides and I want to show you some of those, and I have a lot more code. And I want to talk to you about what I'm going to do. But the good news is that the slides and the code, everything is in a GitHub repository. I'll give you a link for that a little bit later as we go along. And you'll be able to download and use any of this, anything you want. I don't work for any of the companies whose AI tools I'm going to use during this presentation. So I'm not an advocate for any of them. I'll just show you what I've actually worked with and what I actually like. So the title here is just when one agent isn't enough, experiments with multi-agent AI. And I had a description, and that description made sense when I wrote it. But since you know how quickly things change in this ecosystem, I've updated a lot of what's in there, and I'm going to show you some slightly different things. What I'm going to do is we're going to try to put together a whole series of AI tools in one application. Now, I started an app about 6 months ago, which again is a long time in this world, that involved all these different tools. Now I've upgraded them to the latest. So I've got ChatGPT, but I'm using GPT 5.2 at the moment and Opus 4.5 from Claude. And I had an image generator where I was calling DALL-E 3, but I've updated that to the latest. I guess they call it Gemini 3 Pro, or Image Pro would be the actual name of the tool, but we all call it Nano Banana. That one is in there. I also have text-to-speech capabilities using 11 Labs, which is a really nice generator for that, so that I could put in text and have it generate audio from that as well. I'll illustrate that a little bit. And then I threw in some chat from Gemini 3 Pro as well. So how do you build an application, all of these being invoked programmatically? How do you build an application in Java that involves all of them? When I first started this application, which was 6 months to a year ago, I guess, then there weren't any Java-based frameworks where you could orchestrate all these things together. I had to write it all manually, which was fine, but it's not a terribly complicated app. I'll show you, although it turns out to be a fair number of lines of code. In the past few months, however, there have been multiple frameworks released, even though they are all in the experimental or very early stages. So what I'm going to show you is a manual implementation of what I want to do, and then I have a branch that uses the LangChain4j agentic framework, which Mario Fusco did a presentation on at this conference on Thursday, I think. So you can take a look at his YouTube video on that, and he went through the whole thing in detail. And then I put in another branch, and I'm going to use the Embabel framework, the one from Rod Johnson, the same person who founded the Spring framework, and re-implement things there too, and then try to draw some conclusions from all of them. Now, I'm not going to implement it all in front of you. It would take too long. So instead, I've already got everything running, and I want to show you the results. So I needed an application, and I figured let's do something relatively silly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my AI tools generate an opera for me, at least an opera libretto, the text and a bit more associated with that. And the idea is I'm going to have two LLMs take turns writing scenes. So ChatGPT or GPT 5.2 will write a scene and then pass it over to Claude Opus 4.5, which will write the next scene, and back and forth they'll go in a loop until we have the complete opera. And then I do image generation based on the scenes that were generated, all using Nano Banana. And since we have Java, I'm using Java 21 or above, so I have virtual threads available, and I'm able to generate all those in parallel. That's kind of nice. Then I have Gemini kick in. Google's Gemini Pro, or Gemini 3 Pro, I think it is, have a critical review. There's the Anton Ego approach there, although, well, we'll talk about it, as you'll see. And then I use the text-to-speech tool from 11 Labs, which I'm just accessing as a RESTful web service, to generate an introduction and some audio narration. The only thing I couldn't do programmatically is generate the actual music. Now, I use the Suno tool normally to generate music, and remarkably, the paid plan over there will generate opera and everything. And I did a little bit of that, but I can't do it as part of the code. I have to do that manually. So I'll just show you an example of that if you like. So here's the thing. The bottom line, as you take a look at this, is that if you've played with large language models, you know that they share one characteristic in common with people, and that is they think they're way funnier than they really are. Present company accepted? No, probably included, actually. So what you do if you want humor out of a large language model is you give it an absurd situation and watch it take it really seriously and see how that happens. So you can see here, my premise is, they say all operas are about a soprano who wants to sleep with the tenor, but the baritone won't let her. So we got some examples there. So I told this is the system prompt saying, you're composing the libretto for this type of opera. And the setting is in the wild jungles of Connecticut. That's where I live. In the not too distant future, after global warming has reclaimed the land. And the soprano is this intrepid explorer searching for the lost city of Hartford, Connecticut. The tenor is a native poet who's been living in the jungle for years, writing sonnets to the trees and composing symphonies for the monkeys. And the baritone is a government agent who's been sent to stop the soprano from finding the lost city and has a secret weapon, a giant robot that can sing Verdi arias in 3 different languages. So that's about as silly a situation as I could think of. And of course, you'll see how everything gets taken quite seriously. So there's the basic lineup of who we have. And here we go. Here's a couple of the images from one run that I did of this. And you see that they changed. The one on the left here was generated by Nano Banana, and the one on the right is by over here. That was an older DALL-E 3 image in that. And it just cracks me up to see the 84 East sign and everything. I mean, to me, that's funny and everything. So welcome. Okay, so the idea is that the two large language models will trade off doing odd and even scenes. And when I do this manually, I write the loop myself. And then once the libretto is complete, then I pass each scene to Nano Banana in its entirety and just say, give me an illustration for this. And that's the thing I'm able to do in parallel because I can send that using virtual threads. Then I'll send the introduction or much of it to 11 Labs and say, give me an introduction and a little bit of a dramatic narration, I guess. And finally, send the whole thing to Gemini 3 and say, give me a critic's review. So I'll show you the manual version first, which is on the main branch. Everything is code driven, full control over the workflow, and then the two separate agentic frameworks. Now, when I did the manual one, I did use LangChain4j. I started off in a much earlier version of LangChain4j, but everything's been updated to 1.10, the latest version that's out now. So that's there. But LangChain4j agentic is part of it. It's available, but it is considered highly experimental. In fact, let me just show you very quickly. Over here is the website for LangChain4j documentation. If I go to the tutorials over here, then you'll see there's a section called Agents and Agentic AI, and they try to emphasize right here, please note that this whole module has to be considered experimental and is subject to change in future releases. So while you can have the code and you can use it if you like, and as I mentioned earlier, this is the framework that Mario Fusco contributed largely to, if not exclusively, I'm not sure. And his presentation on Thursday covered a lot of this. I wouldn't be too bound into the individual pieces of code, but they do have a lot of discussion about architectures and how you put these things together, using agentic scope, et cetera, things like that. And then the other framework I'm going to use is this one, the Embabel framework. Pardon me. Allergies. It looked like Embabel to me, but if you look on the web page, they do claim that it's pronounced Embabel somewhere in here. And this was created by Rod Johnson, the person who created the Spring framework, and it is based on Spring AI. I don't think it requires Spring AI. I don't know if it's that tightly tied to it, but it uses a lot of the concepts as well. Now, I don't know this one as well. I had Claude Code help me write code using this. My friend Craig Walls, who wrote the Spring in Action book, has a new book on Spring AI in Action, and I was fortunate enough to be a reader on that book. So that gave me a basic idea of what's in there. And this is just another approach to orchestration and working out choreography, I guess, however you're going to play with these frameworks. So coming back here, those are the two approaches. And Babel uses something called goal-oriented action planning. I have no idea how you'd pronounce GOAP, GOAP. It just sounds weird to me. Okay. Oh, Bart, I knew they come in pairs. I knew there was going to be a second one. Sneeze, I mean. So at any rate, the biggest thing I learned out of this is that the manual scripting of which AI to call at which time worked out much better than the so-called full agentic approach of just saying, okay, here's your goal, write an opera and let it go to it and figure out which sub-agents to call at which time. That was problematic. And in fact, I wasn't even able to get one of them to work properly. But I'll show you what I mean. So part of the problem, of course, is that my app wasn't designed with those frameworks in mind. It was designed before the frameworks came along. And the testing is, work against a working baseline. So I'm mostly just using this as an illustration of what's possible, how you might go about stitching these things together. And unfortunately, the looping structure I use doesn't exactly fit any of the orchestration patterns, for example, in that LangChain4j agentic documentation. So what I've done, let me bring up one interesting part. One of the nice features of either LangChain4j or Spring AI is its ability to manage what they call memory, chat memory in these tools. Now, I don't mean memory like a markdown page like Claude would use Claude.md or Gemini or Codex would use. It's not like that. I'm talking about the fact that in case you're not aware, when you make an API call to any of these LLM tools, those calls are all stateless, that every invocation is completely independent of every other one. If you say, hey, my name is, and then the very next message you send, you say, what's my name? It doesn't know because the two calls are completely independent. The way you actually manage memory in an AI tool is that you have to send the previous question answer pairs along with the new question. So they call that a user message is what you send, and an agent message is what comes back. And what you do is you build up a list of these pairs and send everything. And what's nice is that instead of having to do that manually, you can do it with these framework tools like LangChain4j or Spring AI with just a single method call. The only problem is that works for a single large language model. It's not automated if you want to pass the memory of interactions to another model. So what you'll see in my code is I had to actually instantiate an instance of this class called chat memory. Well, chat memory is an interface, and they have a class called message window chat memory. And I would extract the list of messages from that after each scene was generated and pass that memory over to the other LLM as well. And I had to do all this before the agentic frameworks came along. Well, as we'll see, both LangChain4j Agentic and Mbabel have a way to handle this automatically. I mean, that's one of the things I was looking for, because I remembered that was a problem and thought, well, how do they handle it? And they both have interesting ways of handling it that go well beyond what I did, of course. So I'm doing it, if you do it in memory, then it doesn't, I mean, it's fine, but there is a possibility of having persistent memory as well, but I didn't go in for that. Instead, I passed the list of chat messages between the models themselves. Now, in Lang4j Agentic, they basically have like a map, and you come up with a key, and there's a method called output key that allows it to say, here's the list of messages is under this output key, and you pass that output key to both models, and they can therefore share it. You don't have to pass the messages back and forth. They can both access it through the API. In Babel, they define something called an agentic scope, which not only manages memory, but it's actually really something you can take advantage of whenever you need a shared service to operate among multiple subagents. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate. I mean, again, these are simple demos, but just enough to give you an idea what's available. So in those bullet points just explain what I just mentioned. So now I've got, as I mentioned, there are 3 branches on the GitHub repository. I don't plan to merge those into main or anything. The main one is the manual orchestration. Of course, it cracks me up writing an opera that I'm talking about orchestration and choreography, but you get the idea. I have a class called conversation.java that passes everything back and forth, and the integrated opera generator calls all of the AI tools at the right times. It's very explicit, but then again, it has a high probability of working. The Lang4j Agentic I did in 2 different ways. One is that I just switched over to their approach and still kept it kind of manual. I did define multiple agents and multiple tools, which is what LangChain4j makes very easy to do. But I still wrote the loop and the scripting, and that worked out without a problem. As a matter of fact, that approach for Mbabel also worked out without any challenges there. As long as I tell it exactly what to call and when, it works with the agent. And then, actually, I should say that it's not quite as explicit as that. I do drive the system, but then the system's able to call its tools whenever it wants. That works fine. What I had trouble with Mbabel was saying, here's a goal, you decide which agents to call and when. And it's because my goal, I couldn't figure out a way to phrase it that really fit the metaphors for what they wanted. Also, I will point out, even with the LangChain4j Agentic one, managing those subagents is not a trivial thing sometimes. I mean, it's funny how they'll say they did something when they didn't. They just lie, They, oh, would you call this? And I go, oh, sure, I'll call it. Oh, yeah, it's been called when it wasn't. Or I tried to pass the entire scene, and what it turns out it was only passing was a summary. Just all sorts of cutting corners and everything that you have to be aware of when you start playing with these agentic tools. I had no idea how much this was going to be a management challenge, if you will. So let's look at the manual orchestration to give you a rough idea. So in this one, you explicitly control the sequence. You define which models to use and alternate between the models, just so I have multiple ones, and manage the shared memory explicitly and parse the responses. And here's the basic sense of the code here. So I've got a GPT-5 model and a Claude Opus 4.5 model. And here I specify a number of scenes. Now I can let it generate a title as well, but I provided one just in case, and then let it come up with one. And here's what I mean by explicitly determining the chat memory instance. And LangChain4j allows you to use a certain number of messages or a certain number of tokens. And I picked the message window chat memory, where when you specify how many scenes, double it, because we're going back and forth for each scene, and then add a certain number on top to make sure I have enough messages to manage this. And I'll make the scenes here, and I'm just putting in a basic simple loop where I just see, am I even or odd? And that decides which one I'm going to, and go ahead and pass in the memory as well as the prompt, and just parse the results and just go back and forth one by one. The full pipeline says make this conversation and generate it, and then I write it out to a markdown file, trying to format things with the appropriate stanza formatting. Some of that worked better than others. Generate the dramatic narration using 11 Labs. Now that was not with the frameworks. I think Spring AI just added the capability to access 11 Labs as one of its providers. But when I wrote this, that wasn't available. So instead, I just wrote the HTTP connection code. You know, I just used the library from Java, and I think I used Google's JSON. These days, I'd probably use Jackson instead, but I just used a JSON parser to pass everything to 11 Labs and back and get everything I needed. So that will give me the narration and then generate the images. This is what's done by sending everything. It used to be to Dolly 3, and now it's to Nano Banana, and then tell the Opera Critic, you know, Gemini in this case, okay, go write something. So I already talked about the chat memory. So this is just scrolling through it. And let me just show you over here before I go into the details here. There's my conversation with the overall situation that I was telling you about. And here I'll just show you one of the operas that I generated early. This was one of the first ones I put together. And here is like the complete libretto of Hartford Ascending, an opera of love and ruins. And there's the premise, and here's some of the images that it came up with. And you see how it said identify the author of each one. Now, this was a little while ago, so it was GPT 4.1, and it did write in nice lyrical form, you know. I'll give it that. It came up with the names for the various characters. So this is Sandra, and Lucian apparently is the tenor. But what I wanted, of course, was the giant robot. So I think I have to scroll down a bit. Yeah, this was the bad guy, the government agent with the giant robot. Maximilian, it said, Voss was the baritone, and a bass was the giant robot in standing mode. Aria 7, apparently, in this particular case. And all of this is in there. Now, I haven't saved every opera I generated, but I do have in the GitHub repository a showcase directory, so you can see the individual ones. Now, what happens after you're done is that, again, all these images get generated as well. That's all the PNG files, and they're being imported here. And then I had it play with Notebook LM so that I could load all that stuff into a particular notebook as well. This I didn't do programmatically, but this way I could ask questions and, you know, interrogate it and what have you. I'm not doing that now, but that's doable. And then just to give you an idea with 11 Labs, here's the introduction.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hartford Ascending, an opera of love and ruins, an epic tale set in the wild jungles of Connecticut, where love blooms amidst ancient ruins and mechanical madness. Our story begins.
Our story begins, right. And then I did take the time on this one. I'll just give you a sense of what it's like. I ran a couple of these scenes through Suno. Let me turn down the volume on this just so you know about it. it's kind of ridiculous how good a job it did. In fact, let me go to the top and you'll see how the music follows the lyrics here. Oh no, that's different here. I think I brought up the wrong one. I think I wanted to bring up this one. Yeah. I think I have that on an earlier part. At any rate, you get the idea, and you can generate whatever you like with this stuff. Okay, so that's the manual approach where you're able to run the loop and just tell it what you want. Here again, I had it generate a title if the title was blank, and add these prompts to say that this is all collaborative, going back and forth. And it's really, it looks like a lot, but it's not nothing sophisticated. Now the part over here about generating the images is that I used a virtual thread per task executor, and I had to do a little bit of rate limiting because even though I was able to submit all the requests essentially concurrently, then the problem is that I think at the time it was saying, no, I can't process that many requests within a second or something. It was not happy with the rate I had submitted them, and therefore had to generate these completable futures and put in a little bit of a delay just to make sure that I didn't exceed the rate limit constraints here. Okay, now with LangChain4j agentic, then I also tried to put in this supervisor, as I say. So you build specialized sub-agents for the scene writers, and for the production agent was the one that did all the wrap-up, generate the images, put together the narration, write everything up, save it all in files, etc. And the supervisor agent knows about the individual sub-agents, and therefore it can decide what it wants to do. Sounds like Counter-Strike Italy. Yeah, that was one of the comments there. Yes, absolutely. But I didn't play the whole thing. I was shocked at what a good job it did on the soprano voice, just floats way up to high notes and everything. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is just not fair at all. Putting me in, I think I'm part of at least 3, maybe 4 different professions, all being massively disrupted by AI at the same time. One of us being, of course, our own profession of development. At any rate, the LLM reasons about which agent to call next and had the natural language workflow without explicitly writing the code. So this is the sort of code you write when you're doing LangChain4j agentic. The agentic services class has an agent builder in it, and each individual agent is basically prompts. It's an interface with some annotations to say what to do. That doesn't have any implementation in it. So this is going to implement it. I specify which model we're using, give it a name, and then down here in the production one, I can supply all those tools. Those are the methods that are annotated with that tool. They're all in a class. I have a class called Opera Tools, and that has methods like, oh yeah, call this to save the binary files to, MP3s or whatever, whatever I need to do that way. And then the supervisor agent, which is the one that coordinates all the others, you specify which model you're using here. And I had to increase the token size because some of these things were getting big. And see how it lists all 3 sub-agents inside and say, okay, you orchestrate the opera creation, call these correctly. And I put in a max because I didn't want to wind up in an infinite loop. And this is where, when I tried to automate everything, this is where things started to go badly wrong until I kept correcting it. So that, to give you an idea what one of the agents looked like, the scene writer agent says, okay, it's got a description. It's an agent annotation, writes opera scenes with dramatic dialogue. And it says, you're an expert opera librettist, writes scene number of total scenes, and title and premise. And if there's previous scenes, dump that in, and the scene instructions. So you can see how this is the sort of thing that could eventually get replaced. The scenes being dumped in with the shared key there. And I hadn't taken complete advantage of that. I'm just giving an idea of what was here. So the agents are built from the interfaces. So this is a little sequence diagram that I got Claude Code to generate. This is a mermaid diagram. And you can see I just tell it, create 3-scene opera. So it tells GPT 5.2, you write a scene, and then I'll register that with the opera tools, and then tell Claude, you write a scene, and then register that. And then when I'm done, build the whole thing, save the libretto, generate all the images, all the rest of it, and hopefully everything's created successfully. That's probably pretty obvious, but I thought it'd be nice to have a diagram anyway. So the kind of issues I encountered were, first of all, I had an output parsing exception on some large scenes because it was cutting things off. And when it got cut off, sometimes it would say, oh, it's going to be too big, I'll just send the summary. At least I'm assuming that's what the reasoning idea was behind sending a summary instead. So I had to say, no, you got room, don't worry about it. So increase the max tokens. Or I would say, okay, call the following tools, and it would say it called them, but it didn't. It would just lie about it. It's like, oh my goodness, I'd have to put in the instructions, must call this actual tool. Oh, okay, sure. So content summarization and everything. And again, just putting in max tokens and increasing the number was easy enough. Passes the scene content as JSON arguments when calling the sub agents. And if it was truncated, I get that exception somehow because it isn't a complete response. So then taking a look at Embabel, which is very new. I mean, the version number on this thing, just to give you an idea, is 0.3.2. And that's as of a couple weeks ago. They just made it to 0.3.2. So this is really early stuff. But they call it goal-oriented action planning with a Blackboard pattern. You define these actions that transform your domain objects, mark the goals that represent completion states, and then the planner figures out the action sequence, and the domain objects flow through a backboard. This agentic scope is going to give that set of notes that will pass through to everything that's needed. So here, for example, I also have an @agent. This is partly why I did this in separate branches. I don't want the two frameworks to conflict with each other, and generates opera scenes using an alternating AI model. So I have here the initialization one to set up the title and the total scenes and all in there, and then say, write the next scene, and just have it call this at the right moment, at least hopefully. Yeah, so here is where you have to specify your goal. And this is where I wound up with a problem, because the sort of goal, they do have a looping goal that I thought was going to be perfectly appropriate for what I was doing. But the problem with the looping goal was that it expected to make progress toward the destination. And swapping between agents is not something that it does naturally that way as a way to make progress and to iterate between them. It understood the idea of saying, okay, I want to make it to this number of scenes, and therefore I have to keep generating scenes. But the fact that I wanted to alternate the two different models while doing so, it's probably just that I don't have enough experience with the framework yet to figure out how to do that. But it really struggled with that. But I was able to say complete scene generation by building the opera, build the final opera object from completed scenes here. And here's some domain objects like that. And I was glad I was able to use records for all this stuff. Title, premise, total scenes, etc. And then the state transitions of saying, what's the next scene number? Is it complete or not? Did we exceed the number of total scenes? And add them all to a list and go on from there. So again, it's just a little awkward, but the process, there's two things that characterize agentic coding, my sense anyway. One is this idea that they're able to use tools without being prompted to do so. You supply tools to an agent and then it calls them. Now that you can do already in both LangChain4j and in Spring AI without needing an agentic framework. That's the basic function calling or tool support, whatever name they decide to use for it. It's just the @tool annotation makes that work. And we've been using that for a couple of years now. So again, a long time in this world. The other thing that characterizes agents is this idea of having a goal and letting it find a path using these subagents to that goal, that let it work out what the right way would be to go into that. Oh, I love it. I want to see an opera generated with SOAP now. Good old simple object access protocol, which wasn't simple or object or access. I mean, it was a protocol. I'll give it that. Yeah, those are the days, right? Do all this in XML. So the idea behind the agentic frameworks is that you get to set up this high-level goal-seeking approach and supply it with tools and individual agents that know how to use those tools, and you go on. It's basically an attempt to move up another level of abstraction in the chain. Rather than call the tools yourself, then you're telling an LLM to call the tools. And now, rather than tell the LLM that here's a problem where you may need the following tools, we make it an agent, and then we have a supervisory agent that knows it has different agents to do different things, and let it tell the agents what to do. The classic example, the one that's actually, yeah, the backboard, there's a comment here. It said the backboard handles the agentic scope. Yes, that's it exactly. Or at least that's my understanding of it. Again, don't take any of this as gospel yet. Take a look at the documentation. But that's my understanding, is that it keeps track of all that. So inside there. Now, what actually happened, again, the manual mode worked great. And in fact, that's also the first time I've used the Spring Shell. I'd never used Spring Shell before. But Spring Shell works just fine, or at least I was able to get it to do so. For example, if I come over here and I switch my branch to the Embabel branch here. So let me check out that one right inside here. So I'm on the same class here. But now if I go to, I need my terminal here. And then I think the command is /Gradle W run, and then I could say, let's just make a 2-scene opera. I think that's what's going to do it. I may have had to say manual, because I think that one's going to fail because that's the automated one. So, and by the way, I have a README in here. So here's the execution guide inside here, and I can do that as well. Wait a minute. Is that the one I wanted with the Embabel one? I think here's the Embabel one. I'm just looking for the Gradle comment at the bottom. I knew I was going to forget, but I've got it in the file somewhere. So you set up your keys, and oh, that's right. I didn't do it with Gradle. I did it by calling the Java with the generated jar file. Actually, this works. I'm just trying to remember now what was the. Sorry, I thought I had this all set up. Look at the build file. That'll do it. So the build file has the run. Yeah, here we go. So there's unit tests and integration tests and an expensive test. And I thought there was a run as well for this one. And by setting the parameters tag, by the way, that way it matches the arguments to the names of the arguments being used internally. And I forgot. So, okay, since I forgot, I'll show you something I probably shouldn't show you, which is Claude Code running with all this stuff. How do I run the Embabel manual generator inside there? Good old Control Shift F, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I did a new session, so it's got to think about it a second, but it'll give it to me pretty quickly. Yeah, I'm on the Embabel branch right now. Yes, I know. So it's just, I don't want to have to figure this out in front of everybody if you don't remember. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So yeah, so start up here with, okay, so I don't have to regenerate the jar. The jar is already there. So let's go back in here and say that, whoops. And I got to delete the previous line here. There, and that ought to start that up there. There was in Babel starting up, and that started up this thing called the Spring Shell. And then the command is generate opera, and by default it has 3 scenes. Generate opera, and I'll just say 2 scenes just to give you an idea. And then you can see it's in manual mode. This is the one that I know works, and it will say, okay, I'm writing a scene with GP2 5.2, and this is good. A little bit of logging. It was easy to go overboard on the logging, so I tried to cut way back on that, but it'll do it. And while that's going on, let me go back to the presentation here. So let me move that out of the way, actually. So you're able to get the original scenes and then continuation scenes, same models with a different session. You get different names and everything. The AI models, also the 2 models had very different styles, partly, but I could probably work on that. Even with the context, they tended to be grandiose, but these are large language models and they know they're working on an opera. So they don't know everything to them is grand opera. It's all AIDA, right? But that's probably features. Now the human judgment is still really required on this stuff, to tell it that sort of thing. So multiple large language models do create a lot of interesting features out of this. Shared memory maintains coherence across the models, and the absurd premise and an AI commitment. Yeah, well, comedy gold's a strong statement, but Java made this all pretty easy. That was a nice thing. So going back to the, that's not the one I wanted. I wanted this, yeah. So it's taking a moment to write the first scene. I don't know why it seems to take time to do that. Maybe it's because I should have used a less powerful model. While that's going on, I can show you the GitHub repository as well, which is also in the slides. I'll get to that in a moment. So going to the repositories here, it's actually just called Opera Generator. In fact, let me take the GitHub repo and I will paste it into the chat here. Okay, and the showcase is what's showing some of the ones that have generated. The most recent one is good old Vines of Hartford, which has, let's see, where is the complete? I think this is the complete libretto. Vines of Hartford, Arias of Steel. And you can see this is, that's a chorus of monkeys, I think. It's like, okay, I hadn't thought of that. I'm not sure what the hard hats are about. And there's a drum too. And I'm not sure why she's carrying a machete, like, okay. And this time we got Alara and Arden, with the chorus of monkeys in the background too. What cracked me up though, I just have to show you this. Let me get to the bad guy. Yeah, here's our bad guy showing up. First of all, the robot's named Mecha Verdi, go figure. And yeah, I just happened to call the government agent Vance, and I'm just going to call your attention to that and move on, So at any rate, this says, okay, completed scene 1. Now it's writing scene 2 with Opus 4.5. And when it's done all that, then it'll generate the images and go ahead and generate the audio and everything. So to finish up the scenes here, not this, sorry, is this, yeah, that's fine. Okay, takeaways. Yeah, don't worry about that. Now, I have as many tests on this thing as I could add, and I had to separate out some of the integration tests, because they could get expensive if you're making all these calls. Well, really not bad. I mean, we're really not talking about anything huge here. AI Orchestra approaches multiple creative possibilities, live audio demos, end-to-end example. So yeah, they have integration tests, and I even put in expensive tests if I had too many scenes or whatever, and testing the voice type and all that. I have GitHub Actions on there, so running at least the unit test to make sure they work. And let's see. Yeah, the Suno mechanism is really nice. I've generated a lot of theme songs for my Tales from the Jar Side newsletter and YouTube channel. I suppose I should put that in there too, shouldn't I? So yeah, there's the link to the newsletter, and here is the link to the YouTube channel, in case you're interested. That's right. This needs to be updated because I've used the newer versions. That's all. Oh, I also built in this library called JLayer, which is a really old library. The neat thing about JLayer is it allows you to pass it a binary, an MP3 file, and it'll automatically start up a player and play it. So I did things manually. I double-clicked on the file and had it associated with VLC so you could hear it playing. But in fact, I have a mechanism where it can automatically start up the narration right at the beginning if you want to do that. So just basically mixing AI tools and letting each one do what it does well. Anything else here? No, again, I got to update the versions in here. I did try GPT Image 1 on some of them. That was okay. And yeah, all the normal stuff that we talk about in the modern Java world: virtual threads, records, pattern matching, enhanced switch statement, all that stuff, text blocks, etc. So okay, there's the link to the GitHub repository, which I pasted into the chat there. Again, 3 different branches. Here's a link to the LangChain4j documentation. I use slide dev for this. I forgot to add the Mbabel documentation too, but I just Googled it and went to the GitHub repository for that. That was easiest. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Again, not something I couldn't do programmatically. That's why I'm not featuring it today. But something I could do is, in fact, I uploaded everything to Notebook LM and then had it generate one of those artificial podcasts where they discuss the opera itself. In fact, that's one of the things I have to give you an idea about, not the Notebook LM part, but the critical review is not at all critical, presents a refreshingly original vision within the well-worn landscape of operatic romance, conceived for a dystopian future, blah, blah, blah. But down near the bottom, in conclusion, it's a compelling and imaginative libretto that offers a fresh perspective. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, this is not Anton Ego, It's just not what you'd expect. Now, if I go to Notebook LM, I have one of these. I don't think this one is in the publicly available one, but here I had loaded everything into there as well. And the audio overview here already has, sorry, I didn't mean to generate it, but.
Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, imagine this, an opera. Set in the jungles of Connecticut after global warming. You've got a soprano explorer, a poet living in the jungle, a government agent, and get this, a giant robot that sings Verdi in 3 languages. Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. It's the libretto and a critical review for an opera called Hartford Ascending, an opera of love and ruins. Our mission basically is to dig into this really audacious material, see what insights we can pull out, and explore how it kind of twists classic opera themes.
At any rate, you get the idea. And they go back and forth, and they spend 15 minutes talking about how innovative and clever this is. And I'm just sitting there it's so hard not to roll my eyes at all of it. But it worked pretty well, worked remarkably well. So you can try it if you want. The thing you'll have to do is there's a bunch of API keys, of course, because I'm using all these models. Or you could change the models if you want. You could, you need an API key for OpenAI, and one for Claude, and one for Gemini, and even one for 11 Labs if you want to use that section as well. But if you don't want to do that, you can replace whatever you want. There's a question said, according to you, the artist, is the result good enough compared to human production? No, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's certainly better than I could write. I'm not an opera librettist, you know, and the structure of it works really nicely. It's very good how clever it was writing the lyrics, you know. Parts of it are very good. Like in that first opera, that Hartford Ascending, the way they escape the government agent is that the tenor climbs up into the trees, and while the soprano's singing an aria at the robot who's holding a gun on them, the tenor jumps down and kicks the gun out of the robot's. No, it's even better than that. Kicks the remote control for the robot out of the government agent's hand and is therefore able to turn off the robot. And then the spirit of Hartford emerges and they all sing together. It's like, oh my goodness. You know, I mean, I just honestly, it was hard not to just keep laughing, you know, at the whole thing. So is it any good? I mean, no, but it's funny, you know, it's amusing, it's kind of entertaining. And what it really was for me was an exercise in how to put together all these different tools. And I wanted to make sure nobody thought I was taking this seriously. You know, this is just a demo to show what's possible. And if you have some way that you might find it made helpful. By the way, this particular test on the main branch is the one that runs that J layer and shows the audio working and automatically plays there. So this one says 8 AI generated scenes. Actually, I don't remember how many it was or what have you. There's a little bit of my contact info. You are more than welcome to keep in touch. You know what? I'll even paste in the chat here. There's my LinkedIn profile if you're interested. You know, feel free to keep in touch. I'd be happy to hear from you. And, you know, it was just a simple example of what you can do when you put all these things together. Oh, here, it worked. It finished in time. So there was completing scene 1, Great Cathedral of the Lost Exit, apparently is the new opera name. And there's scene 2 getting generated. And oh yeah, that's hard coded. It's got the wrong model name on it, I think. So the Canopy of Broken Clocks. And scene 3 was completed. And then it doesn't say anything. Oh, I think I have to go production. I think that was the other thing I needed. Where was my, run production is the other command I needed to do. But you'll see that's actually remarkably quick for the image generation because it sends, see the Gemini image generator is being invoked all 3 times, like right away because of the virtual threads. So all 3 scenes are being sent and then they'll come back and they'll see all the details. Now, that's why I can't bring up the complete libretto yet for this new one. But yeah, see, successfully generated 3 illustrations. That happened remarkably quickly, I think. You're in the wrong setting. You can't see the messages. They may be showing up on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure on that. It may be showing up on my Tales from the Jar side 1. If you need any details, just send me a message and I'll be happy to share it with you. So where's the resources here? No, good. It should put it under production runs. I don't see a name on this one yet. So I guess, okay. It has not apparently saved everything yet. It's under 2. Why in the world would it be under 2? But all right, it's generating everything. I hope that's not the title. Let's take a look at one of the images though. Let me get that out of the way. Exit 48 is Silent Avenue. That's actually correct. That's an exit off of 84 through Hartford. And oh, that's a good one. That looks very dramatic, doesn't it? That good? It looks like we got zombies, maybe. Yeah. Okay. And the spiral engine and the rain. Yeah. I mean, oh my goodness. So it's finishing up the narration and everything, and then when it has that, it'll complete the put together all the images and the text in the complete libretto. And then I'll have all of it. Now, I am not currently committing the production runs folder. That's for just when I run this. When I find what I like, I put it under the showcase, and then that is in the GitHub repository. So I'm waiting for it to finish that scene narration. You know, the funny part is I didn't originally tell it to generate narrations for each scene. I didn't tell it to do that. It kind of decided to do that. Although I don't know how much of that is Claude Code deciding to do that instead. You know, I don't know which one. But as soon as that's done, I think that's the last step, and then everything will be put together. Oh, good. We're already connected. Yeah, there we are. Oh, generating the critical review. That's actually pretty fast. Again, I've got some hard-coded model names in there that I have to update because we're now using Gemini 3 Pro, I think, for that. And the production is complete. Okay, so let's see here. Yep. And now the complete libretto. Let's take a look at this one. So the Great Cathedral of the Lost Exit, and we got all of this stuff, and Cassia here, and Birch apparently is the tenor. I got to find out who the bad guy is this time. Goliath 3 base Mechanico? I got nothing. And then Agent Calder apparently is a commanding sort of a baritone there. So there's that one in that case. Maybe I'll hear the introduction again.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two, an epic tale set in the wild jungles of Connecticut, where love blooms amidst ancient ruins and mechanical madness. Our story begins.
That sounds pretty similar to what we heard before. So I don't know if that's that different. At any rate, there's the process running, and you see that I'm still have the Embabel prompt there and everything. So I could go on. I'll just go exit though. I think no, it's yeah, that shut it down. So there's the basic idea. Any questions, comments, words of wisdom? Heard any good jokes lately? Feel free. Again, here it is, the GitHub repository called Opera Generator under my GitHub account, which is just my last name, Kousen. And there's a discussion about the keys you need and how to play around with it, generate and play the voice narration. And I think that's everything. Yeah, there's the featured one, architecture, documentation, everything. And just switch branches to your heart's content on any of that. Posted some gags in there already. I don't see oh yeah, I don't see anything else in there, but it's pretty good. So Embabel plans everything from the start while LangChain4j does iterations. Actually, LangChain4j, I have two separate implementations. And by LangChain4j, I mean LangChain4j-agentic. I have one that's manual where I tell it what to do, and one that is the arbitrary, let it decide how to run. And once I tune the prompts well enough, that did turn out to work. It was the Embabel one that the manual approach worked fine. That's the one you just saw run. But the goal seeking one, I have not figured out the right way to express the goal so that the automated mechanism works. If you're interested in that, take a look at the Embabel examples. They have one on travel planning. Of course, that's the hello world for this stuff, where they plan a night out and they've got restaurants and they have music to choose and things like that. And it's all being done all with a model going through and picking what to call and when. So that seems to be a good one. So again, these things will all be changing rather dramatically over the next few months, but hopefully it'll give you an idea what's possible and what's practical and what's coming down the pipe. Bruno, I think that's pretty much everything. Is there anything you wanted to throw in?
Thank you, Ken, very much. I saw a question here. They say it'll be an animated version for Tales of the Jar.
Well, an animated reading of Tales from the Jar side. You know what? I did actually go to 11 Labs and train it on my voice. So in principle, I could have my voice read the newsletter each week. But it just didn't feel right, and I didn't want to do it. So I have it, and when I played the trained voice for my wife, she said, yeah, that sounds just like you, which is a little disturbing. In fact, that's the phrase I use a lot with this stuff is scary awesome. It's really kind of awesome what it does, but it's scary to think, okay, then what do they need me for? You know, but at least I played around with a lot of this. And thank you for everybody for coming. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference the afternoon. And Bruno, I thank you for your help as well, sir.
Oh, thank you, everybody. And that's it.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.